Hello, everyone. Today is a very good day because we have the acting temporary commissioner. That's his words, not mine. Here with the good and the ugly, the good, the bad, and the ugly podcast. And we have the acting commissioner. I'll call you the deputy acting commissioner. There we go.
You call me what you want.
Mr. Stephen House.
You could call me Steve if you want. That's fine.
No, I can't do that.
You can. It's
my
easy.
mum would beat me.
Would she?
She would. That's so disrespectful.
Is it?
Yeah, it's like calling my mum her first name. That's not to say that you're my mum or my dad, but it's just respect. It's just respect. It's just we can't do that.
All right.
But I appreciate But so we're gonna get straight into it because I know time is precious. What have you been doing? I know you've got the DCDG, but people don't know what that is. So I'm gonna let you explain it.
Okay.
What does the DCDG do? And are you going to change the name, seeing as you're the acting?
DCDG stands for Deputy Commissioner's Delivery Group. Mm-hmm. And it was set up following a conversation between myself and the then Commissioner, Cressida. Yep. And we were basically saying, following Black Lives Matter, following the murder of George Floyd in the States, and the reaction in this country, both inside this organisation and on the streets that we had to deal with, and following the mayor's intervention, saying things needed to improve for Black Londoners and officers and staff inside the Met, we decided we need to put something together to put some extra oomph into the effort that was already going on, and that was the Deputy Commissioner's Delivery Group. So we brought together a team of officers who work full-time, and I guess it's been going for over a year now.
It's a diverse team, isn't it? Because I've met some of them.
Yeah, it's a diverse group, and they're there to basically put some extra effort into the things that we were already doing, but get it done quicker, get it done more completely. So things like changing the recruitment model.
What was it before?
Well, what it was before was not terribly fair to black candidates, is the issue.
How so?
So research that we did showed that black candidates who came forward, and it was usually men who came forward, did not do as well as white candidates with very similar qualifications and experience. Yeah. Now, that's not just an experience in London, that was a national problem. So we went back to the Home Office and to the College of Policing, who helped design the recruitment process and the selection process, and said this needs to be re-engineered and redesigned because it's not fair at the moment. And they did that. We worked with them to do that, and it was a bit better, but it wasn't quite right. So we went back a second time and said, no, it's still not good enough. We need to re-engineer this. It needs to be fair across the board.
Was that
and
publicised?
I think we've got there now.
I didn't really know about that. Right. I vaguely remember some of that, but that's really good work that people don't know.
Dom, as is often the case in these situations, it's out there, but the language it's written in is such that it's not immediately obvious what it's achieved, and I think it's achieved a great deal. So we now see a much more balanced landscape for black candidates coming forward. Yeah. You have to ask what was the problem in the first place. And can I just mention something quickly? I think is part of the problem. So at the moment, about once every intake that we have of new recruits, I go along and speak to them, and there's usually about 300 officers, and I've been doing it for about 6 months now. And one of the questions I ask them all, and they're all in a room together, I say to them, how many of you have got family or friends in the Met Police or in another police organisation, and that was an encouragement for you to join? Yeah. Now, in some instances, it's been nearly 40% of the room have put their hands up. And that surprised me at how many it was. And I think there's an issue here, because we have so few black officers and staff anyway, the chances of the chances of them having somebody that wants to come forward is relatively low. The numbers are relatively low, whereas the vast majority of our workforce is white. You get more white people coming forward. More white people know cops, or parents or brothers or sisters are cops, than black people. It's mathematical fact, obvious. That gives an advantage. They sort of know what to expect. They sort of feel this is our place. You know, this is an organisation where white people are welcomed. For a black candidate coming forward, who maybe has no family connections, that's a very, very brave thing to do. They don't know what the organisation's like. They read about it as being racist and sexist and misogynistic and not a very nice bunch of people. So they still come forward thinking, oh, actually, if that's the case, I want to fix that. But that's a pretty brave thing to do. But they also come forward with some strange attitudes sometimes of what the police is all about. And because they don't know anyone in the police, they don't know.
That's one of the things I say is the main problem. I didn't know I knew the general, I watch TV, you watch the bill, and it's like, okay, that's what the police do.
Yeah.
The bill doesn't show that you have to do Chris reports.
No.
So you're coming into this job, and the bill does reflect the fact that there's hardly any black people in the police. Yeah. It did that well, but then it didn't show you all the other aspects where you're like, aid? What's aid?
Also, they were never on nights. Did you notice?
Yeah, they were never on nights.
They never did nights.
They never did nights.
The whole of Sun Hill never worked nights.
And so I think you're right, because I've spoken about this a lot, about we need mass participation. I always say this, every podcast or anything I do when I'm talking, I always say we need more black officers so that other black people in the black community feel more comfortable to say, I can do that job.
Absolutely.
The little kids can go, oh, look, like yesterday it happened to me when I was on post.
Right.
And a kid just walks past. Normally there's a lot of, because we're in Westminster, there's a lot of white kids there, or they're normally people come to the country, on holiday, and they'll wave and the rest of it. Then every so often you'll have a black child and they'll come up and they'll look and they'll be surprised and they'll be like, oh my gosh, you look like me. Yeah. And that is what I try to say to other black people that are thinking about being police officers. That's our responsibility to change.
So that's one of the things that we've done as well. I don't know if you know about the outreach teams that we have.
Yeah, I know some.
So 50 officers, again, very diverse. Yeah. And the feedback they're getting, when they go into to mixed communities, particularly black communities, is, it's thanks for asking. I actually don't want to join the police, but it's nice to be asked, and it's nice to know that you want people that look like me to be in the Metropolitan Police Service. Yeah. And that's very positive feedback that we're getting from them. So I think there's more goodwill out there. We need to work with the goodwill. We need to improve the number of black officers.
I think it's for the black community mainly you extend the olive branch, you say, hey, do you want to come? But it's for the black community to start saying, do you know what? You need to do this so that we can help the rest of the society. Because it's one thing us not having an invitation, but you can't be turning down invitations all the time and still complaining. Because I said that on the pod, I was like, you can't complain if there's an opportunity for you to change something. Yeah. I've got another question for you. Okay. And it links into this. It's because of the retention rate so low, it's something like, I did some research and it was officers were leaving in the first 3 years, black officers, were leaving in the first 3 years, and it was like really, really, really bad numbers. I know the DCDG is trying to change that, and we're trying to aid recruitment, but what I want to know is, and I've had this from other officers I've asked, it's how's the Metropolitan Police, how are we all together going to keep black officers safe so they no longer feel that they need to leave or want to leave? Because a lot of them feel like ostracized. Like, I've been there personally. I'm not going to make this about me today, but I know other officers have also felt alone, and they don't know what to do, and there's no one to speak to. So how are the Met helping with that?
So a couple of things that we are doing, but I'll be interested in your views and anyone else who's listening's views. So we appointed buddies. Okay. So every new officer joining now, initially it was a voluntary thing. So black and other minority officers could, if they wanted to, link up with an officer who was an established officer, been in 2 or 3 years, who would basically say to them, look, I understand what you're going through. Yeah, paperwork is enormous. Yeah, shift work is very strange, but actually that's quite normal. That happened to me as well. So initially it was voluntary, but we've now made it mandatory that officers will get someone who will work with them. We've had good feedback on it, good feedback from the buddies themselves who think they're doing something worthwhile, but good feedback also from the officers who get buddies that it does give them some level of reassurance. That's one thing that we're doing. We've put a chief inspector onto each of the BCUs, whose job it is to work on retention, to look at the number of officers from different backgrounds that are on the BCU, and work with the senior management team to make sure that we understand at an early point if they're getting put off in some shape or form. That. Right.
And what's happening is, I laugh. It's funny. I don't care. It's difficult to find out, the ethnicity of some officers because all they've got is the last name. Yeah. So it's like I've seen it happen where inspectors come along and gone. They've seen the name. Don't want to say the name of the person, but they've seen the name and they've gone, is that person ethnic minority? And then you get a lot of white officers asking, well, why are you asking that question? Yeah. And I think it needs to be pushed out more. That's why it's happening, because you're getting officers like, why are you asking if they're ethnic minority?
There's a bigger issue there, Don, which is I, senior people in the organisation, you, other black officers and staff, we've talked about this before, we need the majority of white officers to understand there are there are greater hurdles for black officers and staff in the organisation than there are for white officers and staff. And it's something that is not necessarily accepted by every white officer. But the number of black officers and staff I've spoken to in the organisation who talk about the difficulties that have been placed, just talking to your family. You know, when I joined the police, which was a long, long time ago, my parents weren't thrilled about it, but they weren't opposed, and they came along to my passing out parade, and they were all very proud, and it was all lovely. Yeah. You know, if you, as a young black man or woman, say to your family, "I'm going to join the Metropolitan Police Service," I hope the reaction is great. That'd be wonderful. But sometimes it will be, "Why do you want to do that?"
Yeah, I think it's majority of the time it's why do you want to do that?
Yeah, because they'd be worried you're putting yourself in danger. You're putting yourself into an organisation where you'll not be treated properly. You might not get the support that you deserve. Where other black people will look at you as if you're letting the community down, or you made a very strange decision. So you've got to have you've got to explain to your family, to your friends, to communities, and then you can face difficulties on the streets. We know that. As Operation Hampshire, as you know, now covers racial abuse, and the number of black and Asian officers that get racial abuse is significant. And we're taking that seriously, and I think the courts are as well now. But it just shows the barrier that there is there, and we need to overcome that, and we need to make sure that white officers understand that black colleagues need support and help.
Yeah. What I find is I've had some conversations, I don't like to name names, but it's exactly what you're saying. Some of the white officers, it's the male officers more so, to be honest. It's always going to be normally more male because there's not hardly any, but there's less females in my command. Yeah. And I've had conversations where they've said, we're being oppressed and we feel as we're being left behind now. And I have to explain to them, the Met is only trying to fix the mistake that it's made a very, very long time ago, and the only way to do it is there's going to be some form of imbalance. Unfortunately, it's kind of against you right now, but you've also got to remember white males make up like 83% of the Metropolitan Police, and the SLTs is probably, I'd guess, and say 80 to 90%. So if you want to be part of the SLT, don't see it as, this black person or this Asian person or Chinese or whatever minority is taking my space. It's actually, why don't you aim for the space that's been monopolized by all the white officers, male officers? So there's a balance there. There's a massive imbalance in minorities, and it's hard because some people would label those officers on the street, would be like, they're being racist, they don't understand. It's more ignorance. There is racism in the police, but not all of the people saying those things are racist officers. But that leads on to my next. I wanted to talk about... Just
before you do, can I just correct one of your figures? So women in the organisation now is approaching 30%.
Okay, that's good.
Women police officers is approaching 30%.
Are we trying to get 50%?
And we are.
Okay, good stuff.
When you look at new recruits, then it's up in the sort of high 30s, low 40s in terms of women.
Why is this not being pushed out anywhere else? This is what upsets me.
Well, I think it is. Dom. To be fair to people in media, they are putting the figures out. It is something we do talk about. We regularly tell the mayor and the mayor's people because they're our oversight body, and they often ask what the figures look like, and we're telling them. So the figure is that picture is improving. It's slower than we would like it to be. Yeah. But we're getting an awful lot of women who want to join the organisation now.
Because just on that quick topic there, reason I'm looking to the camera for this bit, the reason why we need women so much is, for me personally, women are amazing at diffusing situations. I used to be on front line, and there was a female officer with me, and a female officer can walk into a crowd of men and start having a conversation with them and diffuse a fight, whereas if I approach sometimes, it will only inflame the situation. You women are amazing. You're like gold dust to us. Well, to me personally, so thank you very much and keep coming. But the anti-racism, that is a word that it's, I agree with it, first of all, because that's what the Met are pushing now.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And I agree 100%. We are police officers, so to not be racist is one thing. Anti-racism, to me, is just acting as a police officer and stopping a crime from happening. Yeah. And that's what we should be doing, and it's the right way to go. But I've had conversations with officers, and they're saying that they feel as though it's woke movement, it's a lefty ideal, and politics doesn't belong in police. I challenged that, and I said, politics is everything. So regardless of if the police say we're not political, everything is. Having a table in this room, being based on the embankment, that's all politics. I don't care what anyone has to say. It is. But What would you say to that, and how would you say to maybe allay their fears, because it needs to be done? Personally, for me, saying it as a black officer.
So we've been very clear. The Met wants to be an anti-racist organisation. We want our officers and staff to be anti-racist. I get there's political connotations to it, and I'm expecting criticism around us using the phrase, but it's not new. Cress used the phrase a long time ago. I've used it before. A lot of senior people have used it inside the Met and outside, so it's not new. It's just it's got a bit more more publicity recently. Yeah, some people feel threatened by it. Some people think it's all about politics and being woke. I think I'm the least woke person I know, if I'm honest with you. I'm too old to be woke, really. I don't think it should be attached to a political label at all. I don't think it is about politics. I think it's about fairness. And it's back to the sort of thing that you walk past, then you are basically prepared to accept it.
Yeah.
And if you walk past something and think, well, I'm not racist, so that I know I'm not, so I'm fine, but I'll just walk past and ignore it, then you are basically condoning it. So you have to intervene and you have to be anti-racist. That's how I look at it.
I agree. And that's how I explained it as well. But it's just, I think it's more...
It frightens people, it worries people, and people think, the organisation's, it's been taken over by a political agenda. We have not been taken over by it. We are basically here to protect people, to enforce the law, to keep public order, to ensure the Queen's peace. But we want to do that with a diverse workforce, and we want to do it with a workforce where people can come to work and be themselves.
Yes.
And not have to adopt an identity or constrain their behaviours or what they say or who they speak to. That's not a good workforce.
Is Carnival happening this year? I don't know, because I don't get warned for it anymore. Thank you. But yes, it is. Are you going to be down there?
Carnival, I would expect so, yeah.
Are officers allowed to dance?
I think Carnival's one of those where if you're daft enough to make a fool of yourself and do some bad dancing, then it's probably, so long as you're not doing it and ignoring what's going on around you. I wouldn't want officers putting themselves at risk. But
I think that's fair.
If you're joining in with a bit of a good mood, I think it's okay.
Yeah. That's what I would say. If I was like, I don't know, skipper on there, I'd say, listen, guys, you got a responsibility to protect the people.
Yeah.
If for 5 seconds something happens and you're still doing your job, then that's what it is. But don't do anything silly.
Don't look stupid.
Silly prizes. Yeah, don't look stupid.
Yeah.
I agree with that totally. But I put this out on the internet and I asked people some questions. So if you don't mind, I've got some questions.
Yeah.
They're nothing massively contentious, but I know.
Go on.
What do you think is important to the black community?
I think much of the same as what's important to any community in London, that they're safe, that they feel that the police are there to protect them, that the police are on their side, that the police will protect them from bad things happening and people doing bad things, that we're fair, that we're approachable, that we have integrity. I think we've got a bigger hill to climb with black populations for obvious reasons. I mean, something you said earlier about, we're doing all this to fix the things we did in the past and to rebalance. It's not just us, though, is it, Dom? If you look at society...
Yeah, as a whole, I agree.
Last week, the stat that hit me between the eyes was, if you're a black mother, you're 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than a white mother.
Yeah.
That's after they've taken out any physiological differences that might exist.
Yeah. We
know that, young black men are more likely to be victims of crime than young white men. We know that they're more likely to be excluded from school. We know that there are issues around apprenticeships. Anywhere you look, black communities are disadvantaged. Policing is not different, but we are trying to do something about it. So we're trying to rebalance, but we can't rebalance everything.
I had another good question for you. Why don't we have more insight to people's mental health before we recruit? So like psychological tests. Yep. There are some. First of all, I'd like to say there are some psychological tests.
There are some, but it's a very good question. We are looking very, very strongly to see if we can find something that gives you a real indicator into someone's character and perhaps points out some character flaws that we wouldn't want inside the organisation. I sort of think that sort of thing must exist somewhere, and we are looking for it. It's just a case of how predictive is it? How good is that? You've got to line it up with vetting, with face-to-face interviews, with tests, etc.
For me personally, I think it's more. That was a difficult question. You can't. there is no test for it right now that I know of.
No, I'm not.
And then you lead, like, are we going to start having biases for people that have certain traits but have never done anything and may never do something in their life? So it's finding a balance, because I like balance. I don't like to just say, well, you've done that before, so that is who you are, because as the police, we shouldn't be saying that, because people can reform. That's the whole point. That's
a really good point. I mean, you would look for something that gave you indications, and you would try and test those out. You know, is this real or not? And if it was real and became a problem, then you would probably say, look, you're not for us.
Yeah. Got another question. Why is it individuals from minorities are always the ones reaching out for change when others should? Sorry, it's cut off there. Yeah.
Because minorities are usually disadvantaged. I mean, if you're a ruling elite, so I mean, take a different country then. Like go to Sri Lanka. You know, in Sri Lanka, the ruling elite was the minority for a number of years.
Okay.
And that became a problem for the whole society. But in the main, ruling groups are usually bigger. It's usually volume that tells, particularly in a democracy, I guess. And therefore, the majority is usually relatively happy with the status quo. And it's the minorities that want change. Okay. It's a very philosophical question, and probably not a very good answer, but it's sort of more or less how I feel about it.
No, I don't think it's a bad answer at all, but because these are hard questions. One of my final questions is, racism has kind of changed within just the society itself. It's no more someone's going to shout at you, say the N-word, or beat you up because of the colour of your skin. It's more insidious.
Yeah.
It's more microaggressions, which the Met are trying to tackle. But I want to know what's going to happen to make them feel more safe, like officers within, to come forward. Because I've experienced it, and there's that initial fear of, if I come forward, what is going to happen to me?
Yeah.
So what are we doing for that?
So we're trying to make all of our staff more aware, more of our officers and staff more aware of microaggressions, because you're quite right. It's the smaller things that usually add up to a bigger thing. So we're doing some education around that, some awareness around that, particularly for supervisors. We're also trying to develop introduce more black officers, introduce more black supervisors. So we're putting extra money into training or preparing black candidates for promotion boards, so that the success rate is higher than it currently is. Although it's not too bad at the moment. The higher up the ranks, the better it becomes. It becomes even with white candidates.
Okay.
At the lower ranks, so PC to sergeant, there's a bit of a disadvantage for black candidates. So we're trying to do some work with individual black candidates to give them an understanding of the process, what it's like to be a sergeant, what we're looking for to get more through, so that we see more black supervisors, so that there are people like me, to use your language, there are people like me I can go to, people who look like me I can go to say, is this, I think this happened to me, is it right? To provide more support. We've looked, as I think we've looked at the misconduct process.
That was a question
to make sure that we can even that up, because black and Asian officers were, and I think sometimes still are, more likely to get misconduct cases against them, formal misconduct cases, and less likely to get, taken into an office and just told off, and that was the end of it. Yeah. So we are working, we've got a panel in place that looks at all of the misconduct cases to make sure that they're valid and that it's evened out. So post that panel looking at them, it is a balanced process. Before it, we've still got an issue that we need to deal with.
Yeah, I think I've said this to you before. This is going to be one of my closing things. I know time is precious for you, important man. For the black experience, I would describe it this way. It's the best way I can explain it within the police, and why there's so much, why we don't have enough, and why the participation is not so high. I say this to everyone, this is the story I tell. I say a police officer will be dismissed from this role for changing the price of a Jaffa cake, scanning it through, and it'll be, integrity out the window, you're gone. We'll read that on the internet, and they'll say, we can't accept that, which is 100% right. But then you will have an officer that has made racial comments or done something racially, and they haven't been dismissed. They've been disciplined, but not dismissed. So it's like, it feels like that officer, you steal something or you commit fraud, we're not worth the same value as that. Yeah. And I think that's where the balance, for me personally, that's where the balance needs to come from. It needs to be, if you do that, we do not want you anymore, and it's been said in the Met, but now it has to be seen, and when it's been seen, that's when I think a lot of people, the black officers, will feel a lot more comfortable in that. Okay, cool, I'm protected now. I feel as though if this happens to me, I'm still going to be intimidated or scared. But if I do come forward, this person no longer has to be with me if they're found guilty for it, which is something that's what I strive for. That's what I want to
it's a very, very similar story to the way that women in the organisation feel. So when Network of Women was set up, they did some surveys on it, and one of the big issues that the women had was, when we come forward, yes, the organisation will do something about it, but the person is not dealt with severely enough. And if we've got zero tolerance for this sort of thing, then they shouldn't be in the organisation anymore. And I think it's a very similar picture. And I'm conscious that we need to make sure that people in the organisation understand the behaviour is not acceptable. And if you do behave like that, and it goes to misconduct and you're found guilty, or gross misconduct and you're found guilty, then you'll be out of the organisation.
Yeah.
I think we need to set some bars on that.
Yeah. That's what we want to hear. That's great. Sir, I know your time is precious. We're going to stop it here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Oh, I've got one last question. I just did that to you. I just did Columbo to you, didn't I?
This is
just one last thing.
Question, isn't it?
I just Columboed you. No, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so you're going for commissioner?
No.
Why not?
Because I'm 65 this year, and my wife and I think it's time to pack it in.
Time is relative. So is age.
Well, I don't know. You can say that as a younger man, mate. I can tell you, when you get to my age, it's not it's not relative. It's knocking on the door. And I've been in the police for 39 years, I think, and that's long enough.
Well, I'd like to say that I liked your policy on stop and search and the way that you dealt with it and being robust, because you came out and you said it how it is, and I like the way that's how I feel it should be policed. And anyone that doesn't understand that is Mr. House. Do you want to say what you said? Because I don't want to misquote you. You were saying that basically we are still going to target young black youth and stop and search. Yeah. I co-signed that because that's what I'm seeing on the streets. I go on Instagram, I'm seeing black youth dying. I'm not saying predominantly those are only people that are dying, but I'm saying as a community we want that stopped. Yeah. So the only way we're going to stop it is if we go and target it. So it should be targeted. Yeah. And I really appreciate that, to be honest.
Stop and search is not meant to be a random tool, is it? I mean, if it was if it was a random or it was representative, we'd stop 51 women out of 100 people in London and search them, and we'd stop about 20% people over the age of 65. It's nonsense. It's got to be focused properly. It isn't necessarily only on the black community, but it's got to be focused and it's got to be intelligence-led. But it's got to be done professionally and properly and within the law.
The one thing I say is that the Met could tweak is just, and this is, I employ this myself. I did a lot when I was on gangs unit, do a lot of stop and search across the board, whites, blacks, everyone used to get stopped and searched. I always made a thing of apologising because I've been stopped and searched before. Yeah. I know how embarrassing it is, and it's like dehumanising. And sometimes officers don't understand how to build that rapport. Yeah. It's a skill, I get it, but apologising to someone that they haven't done anything or they haven't got anything, it just makes it a little bit more like you can take it a little bit more. You're just like, I'm still upset, but you know what? He's conceded and said he's sorry. He thought he saw something. Yeah. The relationship with the Met, it will get 100 times better so quickly if we just went, you know what? I'm sorry, but I still have a job to do.
I agree.
And that's it. I think that's something that we could be pushing out.
But as you know, Dom, doing a really good stop and search, a proper one that's a proper search, but you don't upset somebody or you upset them the least, and you say, look, I'm sorry I wasted your time. Sorry I've taken up so much time. You understand why we're doing this, etc., etc. That takes confidence and professionalism. Yeah, it does. And it takes time to build up, but that's what we want from our officers.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you coming here today.
My pleasure.
Today, people, good, the bad, and the ugly. Today, the commissioner, or the acting deputy commissioner, Mr. House, has come and graced us with his time. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly podcast. Could you subscribe, which is a button around there, or something like that. We're on TikTok, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly podcast. We're on Twitter and Instagram. Could you follow, subscribe, and all that stuff? Because I don't like asking over and over again. Thanks again to the commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, Acting Commissioner, Mr. House, and we'll be back soon. Peace!